Episode 117, How to Break the Cycle of Pornography with Quinn Felix.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
Pornography is an ever-growing problem in the church. There is often a lot of shame and self-loathing that accompanies those who struggle with pornography use. Coach Quinn Felix wants those who find themselves in this struggle to know that they can break the cycle, deal with their emotions, manage their desires, and create a new identity. If you or someone you love is struggling with pornography, please listen to today's podcast. Heavenly Father loves all His children, even those who struggle with pornography, and wants all of them to feel loved and valued. God allows us to have weaknesses so that we can go through the refining process of making them strengths. Quinn is a great resource for you if pornography is a problem in your life, so reach out to him if you need more help. And if you have a question you would like answered from today's podcast, please go to iTunes and drop it in the review section so we can answer it here on a later episode.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coach podcast today. We're thankful. I sound like I'm saying a prayer. We're grateful to have all of you guys here with us today, those that are listening and participating. And I'm glad to be joined by Coach Quinn Felix. Hey, Quinn.
Hello. How are you?
I am so good. I am so happy to meet you. I would love for you to introduce yourself before we start on this conversation today.
Sure. I'd be glad to. Quinn Felix, born and raised in Bountiful, Utah. Graduated from high school, went on a mission to what was then the Roanoke Mission, Virginia Roanoke Mission. Came home from that, met a gal who was going to BYU, and married shortly after that, and moved to Chico, California, where she was from, and was a firefighter for Cal Fire for a number of years, worked for the church for a couple of years, retired from the firefighting, and my youngest daughter had married and moved to Houston with her husband, who was is going to medical school. And we came out here to visit him and loved the area and wanted to get out of California. And we moved out here about 2 years ago. At that point, I started looking at porn when I was a teenager, and it was an issue on and off throughout our marriage. I had gone through some traumatic events, major wildfires that burned down the hospital that I was working at that time. An automobile accident, and I reverted back to porn pretty heavily, and to the point where I would say that I was addicted, and I lost my job, lost my family, lost my wife, lost my marriage, and my wife moved out to Houston without me. I came out here and in seeking help for the porn problem, I ran into a life coach by the name of Sarah Brewer. And her program finally resonated with me, made sense. And I was able to get over it for the most part. Finally figured out what I was doing and how I was doing it and why I was doing it. So I decided that I was going to, because of her help and what a life coach can do for you, I decided I was going to become a life coach and help those who needed help. So that's where I'm at. I became a life coach, tutored under Sarah, and I'm a contract coach with her as well as doing my own coaching business. So that's where I'm at.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey. I think that it is so important for people to hear stories like that, to hear honesty and to hear triumph and to hear what's available to them. And I'm grateful that you can be part of people's story. I think what a blessing that you can be, and for people who are in the same situation, and not just pornography. Pornography is one of the tools or one of the things that people use when they are having struggles, when they have trauma that they're trying to deal with. And I'm sure we'll talk about that today. And so these things that we'll talk about can be applied in many different ways as well.
Yeah. I found out going through it that it helped me with pornography, but it also helped me in a lot of different other areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the ways you overcome pornography is by changing other areas of your life.
Yeah, so true. Okay, so Quinn, many people think that pornography is a sex problem, and I know you feel that really it's an indication of 3 things that could be going on in someone's life. Do you mind sharing those with us?
Yeah, and going back to that original question, so many people equate pornography to sex. Well, that's a byproduct of it. It's not an issue of sex. It's an issue that's going on with your life. So one of the reasons that people use pornography is they're buffering emotions, negative emotions in their life with pornography. Now, most of us started looking at pornography as we were inquisitive. Well, something new, something interesting. So we would look at it. Pretty soon we started realizing that it also made us feel better when we were stressed or lonely or bored or whatever the negative emotion is. It made us feel good for a minute. But just like any other problems that people face in their life, they use something to buffer from negative emotions. You might feel stressed, so you go over shopping, go out to the mall or shop online to the point that it's detrimental. You might buffer from a negative emotion by drinking a gallon of Mountain Dew, whatever it might be. We all have buffering issues that we are turn to buffering from something that makes us a negative emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it might be, some people go to alcohol, some people go to drugs, some people they look for a form of escape, and that's what buffering is, and it is an escape from an emotion that you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing because when we buffer, we're moving from one emotion to another, right? We move from what we perceive to be as a negative emotion to something that we like more, but they're all just emotions. And so as we get better at learning to feel our emotions and understanding that they don't have to have control, over our life, and we learn how to do that, that is when change starts to happen. But it is really hard. We don't like to feel those emotions that aren't comfortable.
Yeah. So we want to escape from them, and porn is just one way that people use to escape those feelings.
Yeah. Okay. So that's buffering. There's 2 more.
There's 2 more. The second one is over desire. Once you start buffering with porn, you create an over desire. Over desire is in the brain. You fall back to the caveman type brain. So once you start looking at porn, the brain starts wanting to crave those chemicals that that makes us feel good, that gives us that reward system. Okay. Mm-hmm. So pretty soon the brain remembers where it got that dopamine, which is the main chemical when you're talking about porn. The problem with porn is not only does it give us a shot of dopamine, but the related to it is masturbation and orgasm. Those double, triple the amount of dopamine the brain gets. Mm-hmm. Just by having sex and having orgasm, you get a dump of dopamine. And the brain remembers that. That felt good. What time of the day did that happen? What time did it happen? What day did it happen? What time did it happen? And it will remind you, oh yeah, remember when this happened? when you did this, and I got that big dopamine, and I want more of it. So the brain will continually remind you of that. So, and then you factor in there that you get a pre-dopamine hit before you even start looking at porn. Your mind will say, "Oh yeah, remember," and the dopamine will give you a pre-hit, so that you will continue on to find that big hit of dopamine. An example of that would be, uh, my wife used to have a set meeting every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Wednesday morning, I would wake up and say, "Oh yeah, it's Wednesday. Guess what I get to do?" And I would be running on a dopamine hit until 7 o'clock, when I would be alone and could look at the porn and get that big hit. And the brain remembers all that. The brain. It's great. It's like sitting down and having a good dinner. You get a little bit of a dopamine hit. Oh yeah, let's remember to come back here.
Yeah, anticipation has a strong effect on our lives.
Yeah. So over desire, that's what happens when we look at it and then start remembering. The brain shortcuts, goes past all the no you shouldn't, and goes straight to the reward system and says, yeah, you should. It felt good last time. So that's what over desire is. It's a little bit different from buffering, but it's a result of buffering because you want that dopamine hit, or the brain wants that dopamine hit.
Okay.
And the third one is identity. How do you feel about yourself? I like to use the example of, I'm an identity cop, and I pull you over, and I ask for your identity. I don't want your driver's license. I just want to know who you are. How can you identify yourself to me? And you can say, well, I look at porn, so I'm a bad person because I look at porn. Or I'm a bad person because I eat too much, or I drink too much, or I use drugs, or whatever. I'm a bad person because of that. Well, that's who you identify as your personality is, I'm a bad person. Or I'm not a strong person. Or I'm useless. I'm not worthy. We work on the identity issue. And that's a slow process because it takes a while to change your identity, how you look at yourself. And in a way, you just kind of have to start out by saying, if I'm addicted to porn, I'm going to wake up in the morning and say, you know what? I'm not that type of a person. I'm not going to identify myself as a person who looks at porn. I'm going to look at myself as a person that is overcoming porn. So you just start building on that and change the identity, the way you look at yourself. Unfortunately, a lot of people will also identify for you, but we don't have to accept that. We can say to ourselves, no, I'm not that person. I am this person.
Yeah.
And that helps. Once you build up that identity and change that identity, you overcome your flaws.
What are some ways that you help people differentiate between the things that they do, their actions, and who they really are? Like, how do we help people with that?
The best way is just to go back to the origins of your identity as to who you are. And in the church, we preach that all the time. You're a child of God. It doesn't matter what you do, you're still a child of God. And you have that built into your identity, your DNA, as it were. But, going to a story that really helps me. In 1957, statue of Buddha was discovered, and it was just covered with mud. And after they figured out what it was, they were looking at it, and somebody looked inside of a crack, and they saw a gold light coming from it. So they started taking the mud off of it and found out that it was a golden Buddha. Well, the story was, years before, the Buddha monastery that the statue was at, they were going to come under attack, and they wanted to save that statue of Buddha. So they started throwing mud at it and kicking mud on it and making it look like it was a mud Buddha, a statue. All the monks were killed off, And it just stayed in this cave until it was discovered in 57 when they started moving it around and found out that it was a gold Buddha. Well, that's us. We have thrown all this mud at us to cover up our identity or who we are, a worthy person of God, child of God. And we just need to crack some of that off now and get down to who we really are. Porn put a lot of mud on my identity until I started breaking it away. How do you do that? You recognize that you buffer from it, that you over desire it, that my identity is not that mud statue, it's a gold statue underneath all this. And once I start chipping away at that and looking at myself as a new person, things change in life. The way I look at things, the way I feel about myself changes from a negative to a positive vibe. I hope that answers your question. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I'm so glad you shared the Golden Buddha story. It's actually one of my favorites and one that I use a lot too. You probably saw me smile when you started to tell it, because I think that is such a valuable representation of who we are and how we really are.
Yeah.
And I think that it also helps us to correct some of the skewed ideas that we have about our relationship or God's relationship with us. I think some of the times the shame that we feel is because we think that he is going to be disappointed in us, or that we've gone too far, we've made too many mistakes. And in actuality, that is not the case. And much of what we're trying to do here is to rewrite and restore his true nature so that we can have that better relationship with him, so that when we do make choices like this, it's not so detrimental to our identity finding, that we're able to understand more of who we are.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up shame. The biggest thing that keeps members of the church in a pornography habit is shame. And the church is slowly pulling away from that. But for years and years and years, in my case, I'd go talk to my bishop and say, hey, I've got a porn problem. He'd say, well, it's because you're not reading enough. You're reading the scriptures. It's because you're not praying enough. It's because you're not going to church enough. Well, that's not true. I was doing all that stuff, but I still had a porn problem. We can't shame people out of a pornography problem or any other problem, really, when it comes to that. But we need to understand what shame is. A real dumbed down definition of shame is there's something wrong with me. I can't overcome this, even though as much as I've tried, there's something wrong with it. So there's something wrong with me. And I feel shame because of that. Now, the definition of guilt, and in the church, we'd like to put those two together, and we can't. We need to separate them. Guilt is, I did something wrong. Shame is, there's something wrong with me. And we need to understand when somebody has a pornography problem, because they can't overcome it on their own, they shame themselves. And when we shame ourselves, we just put ourselves deeper and deeper into the hole. And that creates a shame spiral. I went for a week without looking at porn. And then I gave into it and I looked again. And I feel bad. I have a negative emotion about that. So to overcome that negative emotion, I'm going to look at porn again. And you get this behavior in 1, 2, 3 days or a week even of shame spiral. And it just leads you down to a pit that you really don't feel good about.
Yeah, that's a good description. I think it's interesting that you did bring up that, some of the way that it's talked about when you talked with your church leaders doesn't really help. It kind of perpetuates the problem, and not that they just haven't had the proper training, right? Like there's things.
Exactly.
So it's easy to blame a lot of things, I think, sometimes on church and church leaders, and there is so much goodness here too. We are a church with high expectations. We are striving to progress, and there is good and bad consequences of that. And I think that sometimes those expectations that we have can end up with having some negative consequences on people in the church, both men and women. How do you think the expectations of men in the church contribute to pornography use, and how can we help men in these situations? And
Yeah.
I want to clarify that it isn't just men. Like we
No,
think
it's
that
not. There are
pornography is a
women
men
involved.
issue, but it is men and women as well. But
Yeah.
tell me about
And
that,
children for that
expectations?
matter.
Yes.
Children for that matter. I mean, I have clients that started into pornography when they were 7, 8 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it starts early and it just perpetuates itself until it becomes a problem, a bad problem. Men in the church do have expectation, and a lot of times we put that on ourselves. And I relate to my mission. I went on my mission. It was a successful mission, but a lot of times we put limitations. It's probably not the word that I want to use, but my mission wasn't successful because I never made it to a zone leader. So my mission was a failure. And we do that on ourselves as adults too. Well, have I made my discipleship even though I haven't become a bishop? Well, no, that has nothing to do with it. And going back to my mission story, I came home, even though I had a successful mission, I felt it wasn't successful because I didn't have that leadership calling. And we use those leadership callings as a tool, a measuring tool as to how successful you are in becoming a disciple of Christ. We have expectations, and if we don't fulfill those expectations, we resort to something that will cover that up. The throwing mud on the golden side of you, or buffering from those negative. Oh, I've never been bishop, so I need to buffer from those feelings. And we just need to get away from that in ourselves and in the church, that you can be a good person, a worthy person, even regardless of the callings that you've had or that you might get.
Yeah, it's so interesting that there is this piece of us that thinks that, a calling equates to worthiness or worth. And I think people are understanding that better now, but it's still there in some ways. And so it's just good to always bring it to light.
Let me go back to my story and how it ended up in a positive way. I was down. Oh man, it was hard for me to relate my mission experiences because I was never a zone leader. And by a happenstance, I ran into my mission, and this was going on for years after my mission. I ran into my mission president in the Salt Lake Temple. And I said, hey, can we go sit down and talk about how I felt after my mission? And so I related to him, and he said, oh, Brother Felix, he says, the Lord didn't need another zone leader. He needed somebody that I could depend on to go and fix things that I was having within a companionship or an area. And that was you. And you couldn't do that as a zone leader. You needed to go in as the person you were and fix a problem that I saw. And that just made sense to me at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be a zone leader. I needed to be the person that was worthy for him to call me into an area that needed help.
Like it takes us right back to understanding our identity and who we are, that who we are is exactly who we need to be, and where we are is exactly where we need to be. And when we get all flustered when we start to think differently than that.
Yeah. It's nature for us to have a reward system, and especially in the church. You're not a good person unless you are a bishop or a stake president or whatever. But that's just not true. I mean, we are, the Lord wants us to be the best that we can be in the situation that we're in, not judging how we should have been something different.
So since we were talking a little bit about missions there, and you shared your mission experience with us, I'm sure that there are many people who are viewing pornography before their missions, stop while they're on their missions, and then come home and pick it up again. How can we help them? What can we do better in those situations?
The first thing to do is, as a leader, if I were a bishop and a return missionary came to me and said, hey, I've got porn, is understand why they're there. That is a huge adjustment coming from a structured life, reading the scriptures every day, praying every day, serving every day, preaching about Christ every day, and coming home and there's nothing there. You can continue some of that on your own, but it's hard. You almost have to create it. And some people can do that and others can't. So they fall into this depression, and I use that loosely, but you fall into this life of, I'm a bad person now. I'm not holding up to what I learned and should be doing. So I'm going to buffer those emotions with looking at porn. That's one thing. Another thing is coming home to the house that you left. And the first night you go into your bedroom and you go, well, you remember what we used to do here? That's the brain coming back to you and saying, yeah, I remember, let's give you a little dopamine hit here. So you fall back into old habits. It's just, we need to be conscious of what's going on in their minds and in their bodies and try to help them understand that this is normal. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just normal. Mm-hmm. Especially with porn. It's built into us to procreate. We have that desire naturally to procreate. So those urges are going to come to us. Unlike drinking, for example, where you have to create that urge. Okay. The body has that urge to procreate. So we sometimes, especially when you get deep into porn, we can't separate the real sex from the counterfeit sex. The brain doesn't know the difference. It just wants that dopamine hit. It wants those chemicals that you normally get from having a real relationship with the fake relationship, which is porn.
Yeah, it sounds like education is such a key. Educating.
Oh, yeah, it is.
People, helping them become aware and being able to see that it is, and that is all part of education, right? Is helping them see that it's natural. Nothing's gone wrong. There's nothing wrong with them, is so important.
And that's where the shame comes in. You feel shameful because you're not doing what you used to do, or you don't feel like you used to do because of what you were doing. So I'm shamed because of that. I feel shamed. Something's wrong with me. And the best way to do that, to get that shame off of you, is by buffering with porn or drinking that Dr. Pepper that I should have. Mm-hmm. Not that there's anything wrong with Dr. Pepper. That's the one that I use. In this program, in my program, we don't count the days free of porn. We count the urges that we process. And we want our clients to process 100 urges just to practice them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes as you get going in the program, those urges start falling off as you process them. So we want you to pick that up and say, okay, what's something else that you can process? What's something that you crave that you can give up and process that urge? Mine was a Dr. Pepper. I love Dr. Pepper, and I will drink 3 or 4 Dr. Peppers. So I started processing the urge to drink a Dr. Pepper. And that gave me more strength. And once we start practicing that, we can start practicing the other urges. Because if you think about it, everything we do in life is started from an urge. And I like to relate to it this way. I'm on my way from Salt Lake to Sacramento, California, and it's nothing but desert in between. And I get an urge I want to have a Big Mac. There's no McDonald's around here for hundreds of miles. So I can process that urge and say, I don't really need a Big Mac. I can have something else so that's an example of what an urge is and how we can control it by processing that urge.
Yes, great information there. We have urges for everything, right? And maybe we would use them in different terms, but anything that I've done or any choice that I've made in my business to progress forward started because I had this inkling or this desire to do something.
Yeah.
We just get to choose whether or not we want to act on it. Like, do I want to follow this urge? Do I want to follow this desire? Whether is this going to take me down this path to something that's going to be useful, or is it going to take me down this path to something that's not useful? And it's just a matter of being able to differentiate where it's going to take us.
And that's where identity comes in again, because the urges you have, you can assign, is this a negative urge or is this a positive urge? Mm-hmm. And if we identify with the negative urges, that's who we identify as with life. So once we start identifying, well, this is a positive urge, and I can change my negative urge, I can process it and make it a positive one.
Yeah. I also think that sometimes we have kind of this hierarchy in our mind of quote unquote sins. Like,
Yeah.
this is not such a bad one, but this one is up there at the top, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but I think we do kind of sometimes see it that way. And maybe it's been created because of, well, these things you don't need to go talk to the bishop about, but these things you do. We tend to have this narrative around them. Talk to me a little bit about that as it pertains to pornography.
First thing is, we use a lot of words in the church that puts us into a negative area. Okay. And we don't like to separate it. We like to put religion and our personality in one sphere. And we really need to separate them out. What I mean by that is, are you temple worthy? Well, and that used to be a question in the temple recommended of you. Do you consider yourself worthy to enter the temple? Well, man, I looked at porn a week ago. Am I worthy or not? And we need to separate that. We need to and the way I look at it, and the way I talk to other coaches about it is, instead of saying, are you temple worthy, are you temple prepared? Okay. Now, going back to the temple recommended interview, they've taken that question out and they've replaced it with, are you striving to be worthy? And that puts a whole different aspect on it. That takes a lot of pressure off of somebody who might be dealing with porn in their life. Can I still go to the temple? Are you striving to overcome it? Yeah, then you're worthy to enter the temple. You're prepared to enter the temple. We make our choices either positive, sinful, negative, helpful. And in the church, we tend to put them together and say, I'm a bad person. I'm not a worthy person. I can't do this because I feel this way. When in reality, we were told, I give unto men weaknesses that they might overcome them. Is pornography a weakness? Yeah, you better believe it. And if you're working to overcome it, I'm still on the disciples' path. You look at Paul when he goes to Christ and says, I've got this thorn in my side. Can you help me remove it? We don't know what the thorn was. We don't know what he was referring to, but in the way we look at it, we can say, yeah, this thorn is pornography. This thorn is drinking. This thorn is drugs. And how did Christ respond to it? It's part of your discipleship, Paul, to figure out how to do this. And if that means that I need to talk to a coach, talk to a therapist, talk to my bishop, then so be it. Learn how to overcome it so you are striving to become a better person, a better disciple of Christ.
I love that explanation. And I sometimes think we get this idea that I've been given this problem to be tested to see if I can overcome it, or whatever our skewed decision or idea about it is. And I would really love for people to be able to see the flip side of it, which I believe is we have this little bit of a thorn in our side, whatever it is, because Heavenly Father is trying to prove to us that we are capable of overcoming all of these things. It's not that we're trying to prove ourselves to him in any way at all, but it's him proving to us, you're capable. And with me and the help of our Savior, you can do it.
Yeah. And he never put classifications on there that says, well, you have to do it by yourself. I can rely on other people to help me become a better disciple of Christ. And for some reason in the church, especially with men, we've told them, well, you have to do this on your own. You have to figure it out. And that's not the way it works. I mean, we have this group that is supposed to be helping us. And that's why we go to church every week, to take the sacrament, to repent of what we did wrong during the week. You didn't say, well, you did this, you can't take the sacrament anymore. And the church has really improved on that. I mean, when I was growing up and went and confessed to my bishop, well, don't take the sacrament for a month. What's that doing for me? That's just making me feel shame and guilt. And the church is improving that. And you go to the bishop now, well, let me see your temple recommend. You can't have it until you overcome this. Well, you go to the bishop now and he'll say, hey, you know what? If you're striving, Go to the temple. You're going to feel much better about yourself and be selfless by going to the temple. You're going to be thinking of other things instead of your porn problem. You're going to be helping somebody.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so grateful and appreciative of you sharing with us today. Like I said in the beginning, sharing your journey and sharing the things that you have learned, because there are things that we can all learn from that. Before we leave, can you share with people where they can find more of you?
The easiest way is just to go to quinnfelix.com, and I have the website there, and they can contact me through that.
Awesome.
If I can just go back to revisit a question, when I
Yeah.
was saying that reading your scriptures and saying your prayers, you still have to do that. That's helpful, but it's not the only way
Right.
to overcome an issue.
Yeah. There is danger in saying you need to just read your scriptures more and you need to
Yeah.
say your prayers more, because that's not how it works. And so then people seem to think, well, I must not be faithful enough. It kind of perpetuates this
Exactly.
problem of shame. Well, I must not be doing it right. I must not be reading enough. I must not be faithful enough. And that's not the case. It's just not how it works.
Yeah. Thank you for, I felt like I left that out there in the field a little bit, but I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did.
It's part of all the process that we need to go through to overcome and become a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will link to all of your things in the show notes so people can find you. And I'm so appreciative of you being here today. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being able to do this with you. It's a lot that needs to be put out there and help people.
Yeah.
It's a big issue in the church.
The more we talk about it, the better off we all are. So,
yeah. All right. Thank you.
Have a good one, everybody. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.